Hey everybody, it's AlTonya and welcome to Scene Talk in 7. This is the pilot episode. So thank you for joining me today. And I've got my notes because I'm trying to do this in 7 minutes. I will not do 7 minutes. It's probably going to be more like 8, but it's going to be fast. So today I'm reading from A Lover's Worth. And A Lover's Worth is book 5 in the Ramsey series. So for those of you who've been following me for some time, you know about the Ramsey series. For those of you who haven't, hopefully you'll learn something new. I will not always be reading from the Ramsey series. I will probably be pulling books from all over. It's just whatever book I look at next, I'm going to be like, that's the one. And I would love for you to chime in. If there's something you really want me to talk about what I did in a scene for, let me know. Okay. So back to A Lover's Worth originally came out in July of 2008, book 5 in the series. I recently did a second edition. There's been no changes to the interior of the story, so the story hasn't changed. So there's nothing you need to go back out and get or feel like you need to read. The only thing I did was I updated my cover and the back copy, my bio on the back, updated that a little bit. So all right, so today we're going to be reading from chapter 4, and there are a few things I want you to keep in mind while I'm going through this scene. So as I said, I'm trying to give some tips, some little insights into how I created my scenes. So for this one, I want you to keep in mind or pay attention to how the reader is given insights into the characters and situations by other characters. As writers, you don't always have to talk. If you're the author, you don't always have to do the talking. You can let your characters do that for you, and it'll be a lot more enjoyable for the reader when they get to see the things happening through the eyes of the characters. So keep that in mind. And look for how I did that in the scene. Switch up your POV a little bit. And by that I mean, sometimes you have your character in their own head, and sometimes that's what you need. Other times it may be multiple characters in their own heads in the same scene, and sometimes you need that. Or it could be in the midst of a situation like a meeting or a party's going on. So there's activity, and then there's that POV moment that the character is going through something and working it out in their head. You can also use dialogue. I love that. Dialogue to propel what's going on in the scene. Dialogue to in the midst of your dialogue, there can be a part that comes right after that helps you to peel back a few more layers of what's happening in the story itself, and sometimes giving you insights into the character's POV. So just another way that you can do that. So kind of look for that in the scene itself. And then powerful statements. There's statements that can be made that make you want to just find out more. What did they mean by that? So look for that happening in the story, in this scene as well. Okay, so I'm going to hush. Well, I'm not going to hush, but I'm going to stop talking about that, and I'm going to read the scene. And this is from chapter 4. Do you ever stop working? Mel asked her cousin once they pulled out of the hug. Jo moved to her side of the table. I know you ain't talking, she retorted, placing her purse and portfolio on an empty chair. Touche, Mel said, once their laughter dwindled. Got so much going on with Zara and all, but this is a job I may take, Jo confessed, idly toying with the small row of emerald beads that lined the V-neck bodice of her sundress. With the way things are at the studio, we need all the business we can get. Of course, Melina was concerned, and Jo gave a quick explanation of Kenshaw's alleged embezzlement. She decided to omit Moses' involvement, however. I'm so sorry, sweetie, Mel whispered, leaning close to squeeze her cousin's hand. Jo shrugged. I don't even want to talk about it anymore. Besides, I came here expecting to hear something happy. Was that laughter I heard in your voice when we talked earlier? It was, Mel confirmed, her smile as brilliant as the poppy and lilac print blouse she wore. Johan and I are going to renew our vows, she shared. In seconds, the cousins were hugging again. Well, we knew it'd be impossible getting everyone together with all the family stuff happening before the end of the year, Mel explained when Jo required details. There's Quincy's baptism, Quay and Ty's anniversary party. Thank God Fern and County haven't set a wedding date yet. And Quest and Mick are going away for their anniversary, so she drawled, spreading her hands across the table. Mick and I came up with a plan to hold Quinn's baptism at the church, followed by me and Johann renewing our vows with a huge party afterwards at Quest and Mick's. Impressive, Jo breathed, closing her eyes in contentment. I really can't wait. Lord knows it's just what I need. If only. Mel didn't need her to finish. If only you could prevent running into Moses. Has it been that rough? Mel asked, watching Jo's silver gaze widen. You have no idea, she confirmed. Does it have to be that rough? Jahari knew what her cousin was really asking. It does for now. I just don't know how to change things, how to approach certain things. Mel nodded, needing no further clarification. She could certainly understand the woman's predicament, having been there herself not too long ago. Just don't let your cowardice win out, she advised. Remember that me and Zara are both here if you need us. Jo threw back her head and laughed fully. I can't tell you how good that sounds, she sighed, before her calm evaporated. I'll be damned, she whispered, seeing Carlos McPherson across the dining room with Moses. Mel turned in the direction Jo stared. So fine, she complimented in reference to her brother-in-law. Stop, Jo ordered, rolling her eyes when Mel fixed her with a teasing look. Mel stood to greet Moses with a hug. Meanwhile, Carlos approached Jahari. The two shared a tight embrace that Jo noticed Moses observing. She managed to overlook that long enough to focus in on Carlos, whom she hadn't seen in months. Thank you, Carlos. Thank you so much, Jo was telling him, smiling when Carlos' expression was curious. Moses told me about your undercover work on the boat. He shook his head and focused on the string ties at Jo's shoulders. I wish I could have done more. You did plenty, Jo assured her friend, patting a hand against his rough, honey-toned cheek. So what about you and Mo? How's that going? Carlos asked, lowering his tone as he voiced the question. Other than saying it's difficult, I don't really know how to describe it. I'd probably add confusing, tense, overwhelming, erotic, she tacked on silently. Carlos glanced at Moses, who was still talking with Mel. Listen, I know we can't go into specifics, he said, dipping his head close to hers. But will you tell him the truth about what happened when you left? Are you crazy? Jo hissed. Honey, listen now. Mo had his reasons for it. I know his reasons, Carlos, she said, patting her hands against the midnight blue polo shirt he wore. That's exactly why telling him about what happened to me and the baby would be too much for him to handle. You know him. He'd hold himself responsible. He didn't know a thing about the baby, but I did. And I didn't care. But honey, if you just stop, she whispered, noting that Melina was done talking with her brother-in-law and was taking a call on her cell. Moses, meanwhile, simply stood near the table. Both his hands were pushed into the pockets of his pearl gray trousers. While his stance was casual, the effect was belied by the intensely unwavering, dark stare. And that is a reading of A Lover's Worth from chapter 4. So a few things with the scene. I talked about letting a reader see your characters in the situation through other characters. So that's pretty much what's happening all through this scene. You got Melina, who is talking about so much stuff. She's actually doing a lot of the work, and that was one of the things, letting your characters do the work. She's talking about really catching up everything that's going on with the family in this scene. That kind of segues into the main plot of what's happening between Jahari and Moses. She actually even gives a little insight into how gorgeous Moses is, and sometimes you just want to drop that in there, little things that keep the characters how they look active in the reader's mind. She, so she's giving a little subtle insight into Moses' appeal, switching up the POV, using the dialogue in the scene when Jahari and Carlos are talking, and there's something that she kind of thinks about in her head. She says erotic, and that's kind of like her in her head, but she's using the dialogue. I'm using the dialogue to kind of give her a chance to say a little bit about what she's thinking. So just those little things can just make your scene come more alive. Um, the powerful statement. So Carlos introduces that when he asks if she's going to tell Moses about the baby. So at this point, we find out that Jahari knew about the baby and she didn't care, and that's like the statement. What does that mean? What is she saying? I want to know more. So little things like that can do a lot to just enhance your story and encourage you and motivate you to keep just to keep writing and to keep trudging forward so you can get that secret out. So that's me. And I know I'm over time, but I'm going to do better. This is the challenge. Scene Talking 7. So please drop any questions you may have in the comments field, and I'll answer them, and I'll see you next time.